Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian, a medical student from Australia. And in today's video, I'll be covering everything you need to know about doing an honours year. From what it is, to why you should do one, I'll be addressing some of your common questions about it, as well as sharing my own experience of my honours year and some of the lessons that I've learned. Everything that I talk about is by no means a definitive guide of what you must do. These are simply my own opinions, and I hope they can provide some insight and some information about what you can expect from the year. What is an honours year? Honours is an extra year of study, and depending on your university, it generally follows immediately after your bachelor's degree. So for me, I did a Bachelor of Medical Science, which is a 3-year degree, and you add a 1 year of honours towards that to make it a 4-year degree in total. And so I graduated with a Bachelor of Medical Science with honours. And so what you can expect from an honours year is that you'll be encompassing some of the coursework that you did and some of the knowledge that you learned in your undergraduate degree. So whether you did business, science, arts, you'll be taking knowledge that you did in the last 3 or 4 years and then applying it to a more practical, hands-on research project. And so for me, I was doing a science honours, and so that means I had to do more laboratory-based stuff. But you might be doing an arts or a business honours, and that might be more analytical or academic-based things where you might be reviewing a certain topic area. And in order to complete an honours year, you'll have to do both coursework, which is your general assessments, presentations, and you also have to be doing research work. So that's doing the groundwork, going to your laboratory, going through your research papers, and it'll be a combination of both. And generally at the end of it, you'll have to submit a thesis. And doing an honours year offers a great opportunity to integrate what you've been learning into advanced research training to give you more practical experience in the years to come. My honours experience. I started honours at the beginning of 2018, and the reason why I chose to do an honours year was because I didn't get into medicine the year before. I had one interview and unfortunately that didn't go very well. Of course, I was pretty bummed, but I'd always had honours in the back of my head in case things didn't work out. And so I decided to do a basic science research project working in a laboratory, and I managed to find an amazing research team. I was working in a liver research team, and my role was essentially looking at a specific gene variant that played a role in fatty liver disease. And I had to look at how this genetic risk factor influenced disease progression or had an impact in some of the cells involved. And so as part of my honours degree, we had to complete coursework, but also research work. And then you also had to complete a thesis at the end of the year. So for us, it was a 15,000 word thesis, but it might vary depending on the university that you go to. It might be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. And the majority of my time in honours was actually spent running around in the lab. And what I loved about it is that it was completely different to the things that I've been doing the year before. So it wasn't your traditional going to lectures or going to seminars or just studying in your room. I had my own little desk, my own little cubicle in the building, but then I got to go into the lab, which was right next door. And at the lab was when all the interesting stuff really happened. So I was extracting RNA, doing PCR analysis, I was looking at proteins using Western blot, I got a little bit of experience of flow cytometry, and I spent a lot of time actually handling human blood and isolating macrophages on it because we were looking at how macrophages were responding to specific reagents. So if you're already a science researcher, a lot of this will sound super basic, but for me, doing this for the first time was a really awesome experience. Also just getting used to the whole lab environment, how all the team operates, so you have your principal investigator, or your PI for short, which is pretty much the person who oversees most of the projects, oversees most of the research, and gives you the direction of the theory behind what you're doing. And then you'll have postdocs, you'll have students. I was an honours student, so I was the lowest of the low in terms of the most junior person in the team. You have PhD students, so you get a real variety of people that you're working with, and you're gaining skills that are really going to help you in terms of a career later on. And fortunately, like many of my peers, I graduated with a first-class honours at the end of it, and I had amazing support from my research team and from the friends that I made during the year, but I'll touch on that very shortly. Why do an honours year? So first of all, it gives you a chance to experience what being an academic or a researcher is like. You get to see the day-to-day activities and the events that you'll have to do. And that's not an everyday experience. When you go to university, you're just going to lectures, you're going to seminars, you're doing your study at home, but you don't get to go into a laboratory and get sort of this work experience. That brings me on to my second point. You don't just get to see what working as a researcher is like, you get to learn all the new skills and gain a lot of relevant research training. So I had to get trained on a lot of the different machines. I managed to see how animal work was conducted. I got training surrounding like how we'd even have to format and write a thesis. I remember there was a lecture from a PhD student on how to format in Word, and I remember looking at that lecture and being like, I don't think I really need to go. How hard can Word be? But looking back, it was one of the most useful things that I'd done. Like, I was baffled by how much things you could actually do in Word. Just formatting the individual page breaks, putting the headers, the footers, making it all look pretty, especially when you have to write an 80-page thesis at the end of it, 15,000 words. All that formatting helps. And so just learning a simple skill like how to use Word properly when you're trying to write a big, long research thesis, that's super useful. And honestly, I couldn't imagine what writing an 80,000 word thesis would be like as a PhD student. So kudos to everybody out there, especially my mates, doing a PhD currently. And not just that, but it's the general skills about critical thinking, how to effectively look at a paper and research and reference and format. That's gonna make you more employable. That's gonna set you up for postgraduate study or to get a job after you've completed it. I know a lot of my friends went on to working as a research assistant afterwards. Some of them are doing PhDs now, and then they'll go on to working as a postdoc and moving their way up science. There's a lot of opportunities to be gained from learning these skills, and that's not even just science. That's in any field that you're doing. It will just make you more employable by having the practical skills and by having that extra year under your belt. Another reason is that you can build connections and networks. So if you're interested in cardiology, or if you're interested in infectious disease, you might be wanting to work in a research team led by an infectious disease or something related to cardiology. When you do that, you'll meet other cardiologists, you'll meet clinicians, you'll meet researchers that are in the field, you'll get skills that are relevant to that specific topic area. And finally, honors gives you the chance to make new friendships and to create new peer groups. Honors is a very tightly knit community. There was about 30 of us or so in our cohort, and you got very familiar with everybody at the end of it. You did all your research together. A lot of the people in my laboratory team are some of my best mates now. You got to share your project. Everybody's sort of with the same mindset and the same mutual goals and vision. So it's really nice to bounce ideas with people of the same interests and the same aspirations. How can I get started? This is probably the most common concern people have when looking into honors for the first time. And I'll try to help you out with a few questions that you guys have. And the first one here is, how do you get into honors? So to get into honors, you have to apply directly through your chosen university. And in order to get accepted, you have to have a supervisor that's happy to have you on board and a project that's feasible to do within 1 year. Each university will be different, and I would check the university website to see what specific things you need to complete. Can you research anything you want? Yes, you can, as long as it's within the scope of that research team. You just have to make sure that you find a relevant supervisor in that field, and depending on the topics they can offer you, you choose one that's going to be feasible for you to do. How did I find a supervisor? So for us, our university provided a list of potential projects, and then they provided the list of the supervisors involved in the research team. And so I had to look through what could be potentially interesting for me, and I reached out to a bunch of different supervisors, and eventually I found a supervisor who I arranged a one-on-one interview with. And at the interview, we got along really well. I also got the chance to meet the bigger research team and have a look at the lab environment that I'd be working in, and I found out more about what the project would actually be. So if possible, if you can, I'd suggest organizing an interview beforehand, but not just organizing an interview with the supervisor, but seeing who are the other members in your research team. Because a lot of people will ask, what's better? Is it better to find a really good project that I'm super passionate about, that I'm really interested in, or find a really good research team, even if the project is sort of not the most interesting thing for me? And I would say it depends. Some people might really value having a fun research team. Maybe they're all around your same age, maybe you just get along and vibe with them really well. And sometimes you might just be really passionate about a project and want to do it. So I would try to find a balance of both. Have a research team that you're happy to work with because you're going to be seeing these people every day for a year, but also a project that gives you some motivation and that you can drive yourself to actually get up and do the work. Another question I have here is, how do you narrow down what research topic you wanted to do? For me, I only had about 3 weeks to decide on what my honors project was going to be, because I got my rejection letter from the medical school, and then I had to sort of scramble before the applications date closed. But unlike most people, I just chose a topic that was interesting to me. But I know for a lot of people, how they scoped down the specific project was they first of all address, what do I like doing? If I'm a science student, do I like physiology? Do I like pathology? Find out what interests you. Once you've got your interest areas, then scope out what are the potential research projects, what are the potential research teams in those fields. And then once you've found the research teams in those fields, then try find a supervisor and a research team that you'd actually get along with. How can I make the most of it? So the first question I have here is, what can I do in the first week that I'll really appreciate down the line? And my best piece of advice would be to really talk to your supervisor about what the rationale or what the vision for the project is. what specific type of training that you'll need, because depending on your laboratory environment, you'll have to get trained and cleared for certain equipment. So you have to know exactly what you're going to be required to do, know exactly why you're doing the things that you're doing. So do your background research if you're trying to transfect your cell line to upregulate a certain gene like I was trying to do, and then not realize that the thing that you're transfecting with can't do it on those cells. You're going to be in a world of trouble. I wasted 3 weeks doing that. Do not make that same mistake. And so you really want to know why you're doing it and what you're going to be doing. And if you can figure that out in the first week and have your overall vision and plan going forward, that's really going to make things clear so that you're not wasting time. And what you'll pick up is that research moves quite slowly. Experiments can last over a bunch of weeks, and in order to get statistically significant results requires you to repeat experiments and make sure that you've done everything with specific controls and in the right environment. And another thing I'd suggest is getting used to using programs like GraphPad Prism and SPSS to do data analysis and to make your graphs later on, and getting familiar with programs like EndNote to make sure that you're building your reference bank with all the papers that are going to be relevant when you come to writing up your thesis. Because I think I had about 100 references in my final thesis, and in order to keep track and actually make sure that it's the correct formatting according to APA or Harvard, you'll need to be using some sort of program, because entering all of that in manually would take an eternity. Will doing an honors year help me to get into medicine? So this was something that I thought about, some of my friends thought about, and I'm sure many other people thought about before studying honors. And so will it help me get into medicine? Not specifically. Just doing honors is not going to be like, ooh, he did honors, I'm going to give him a tick off. So it's not going to help directly, but it's going to help indirectly. Because first of all, if you did an undergraduate degree and you didn't have the best marks in first year or second year because you were being a bit lazy with university, when you're applying for medicine applications, especially in Australia when it comes to using your GAMSAT mark and your GPA, it'll be scaled on your last 3 years. And so if you do an honors year, they'll take your honors year as your third year mark, and they'll discard your first year mark if you did a 3-year degree. For me, a first class honors worked out to be a 7 out of 7 GPA. So it gives the opportunity for a lot of people to boost their GPA when it comes to medicine applications. Another thing it allows you to do is it gives you an extra year. That's an extra year to figure out how passionate you are for medicine, to give you another crack at the GAMSAT if you didn't perform well the first time, and also just to develop skills to broaden your horizon in terms of what other postgraduate opportunities you can have later on. So no, honors is not going to be the magic bullet that gets you into medicine, but it'll definitely help indirectly by one, giving you a chance to boost your GPA if you weren't happy with it the first time, and also giving you another year and another opportunity to try for the GAMSAT or to try figure out your priorities for next time. But just to be clear, no, you do not need an honors degree to be eligible for postgraduate study in Australia. You only need a bachelor's degree, so a Bachelor of Medical Science or Arts or Business would have sufficed when it comes to applications. All your other questions. Is it as time consuming and difficult as everyone says it is? And honestly, I didn't talk to that many people before I started honors, so I didn't really know what to expect too much. Is it time consuming? Yes, it can be, and that very much depends on how much work you're willing to put in. Some students might only want to do it a little bit. They might go in 4 hours a day, or they might put in 3 hours of research here and there. But a lot of other people, like myself and some of my friends, we wanted to do well, we wanted to make the most out of our project. And so how much work that you put in is dependent on how passionate you are and how willing you are to put in that work. So I treated it like a working day. I'd go in at about 9 o'clock and I'd leave at about 5. And when it got to the busy periods when I was trying to get a bulk of experiments done because I was trying to meet a deadline, or I needed to do it because a certain cell line was optimal at that time, I remember I would come in at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. and I'd finish at 8 p.m. And I didn't look at that as really tiring work. A lot of the times it was quite enjoyable. I was making progress on my project. I was excited for the results that were going to come up. I went to dinner with my friends afterwards. In terms of the difficulty, I think the difficulty comes from things that are new to you. Like, I wasn't used to writing a really long thesis. And so trying to put those first few thousand words is really, really hard. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to structure it. It was something new. And those are just skills that you build up and you get better at over the year. Sarah May says, how to find motivation to finish my thesis in the last 4 weeks I have left. Well, first of all, good luck, Sarah, for your thesis. I hope you smash it. In terms of the motivation, honestly, if you have some friends, try find a group. I used to write my thesis with a bunch of friends next to me. We'd all go into a library and they just grind it out for 4 hours, 5 hours together. And then we'd go to dinner afterwards to at least give us something to look forward to. Has honors helped you in medical school so far? And this is a resounding yes. These skills about research, about looking at papers, referencing, critically thinking, they've all been translated into medical school. And as part of my medical degree, I have to do a research project. So just being familiar with how to write a research abstract, or how to reference, or how to do a scientific presentation, all of that is coming useful now, and I'm really glad that I did it. And Harvest says, is it fun? And the answer to that is a big resounding yes. It was a lot of fun. I know there was a few times when I was stuck in the lab till I think the latest I left was 10:30 p.m., 11 p.m. And that is not the most fun experience, as you may expect. But overall, it was really something novel, something new to me that I knew that would help me later on. I made one of my closest friendship groups in honors, and I still talk to a lot of them, some of them my best mates. And I met my girlfriend, Deborah, who's been featured on the channel, in honors. She was working in the lab building next to me. And so you never know what relationships, friendships, and opportunities may arrive in your honors year. Well, that's gonna wrap it up, guys. I hope you found the video informative and it addressed some of your concerns that you may have been having about doing an honors year. And if you still had any more questions, please drop a comment down below and I will answer them all ASAP. But if you enjoyed the video, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time, this was Sebastian. Stay sharp. Quick shout out to the OG Honors crew. You guys know who you are. And I've been repping the watermelon badge the entire video. Just wanted to say thank you for making my honors year awesome. It honestly wouldn't have been the same without you guys.